Hello, you. Excuse me, it's me. It's still fairly early for me, so I don't have my voice all there yet. Sorry about that. First, I want to say thank you, everybody who is engaging in conversation, because I really enjoy that. It's nice to know that people are watching videos, and it's nice to know that you are very passionate about how you feel. Which brings me to this video, because being passionate about things is very important. Being passionate about the lives of people is also very important. But there is one thing that we have to understand about life, and that's death. And sometimes people, especially people that are terminally ill, deserve a choice. If you know that you're going to die, or that if somebody in your family is going to die, and being in a hospital hooked up to a million machines is not how they want to die. They would rather be at home cuddling with their cat or their dog, watching a movie on TV. They choose to die in a different way, a die that makes them happy. A death. Sorry. A death that makes them happy. I have to admit this, this subject is a little tough. It's a little tough. I think it is for everybody, because nobody wants to admit that somebody could be dying. Nobody wants to think about the fact that people die, but they do. And when you're confronted with it head on, you have to make a decision. Now, this can happen to anyone. Terminally ill, of course, most people think of like cancers and things like that. But it can also be something that the person does themselves to put them into that frame. And that includes things like EDs. That includes not eating so that you starve to death. And it includes eating so much that you feed yourself to death. These are real things. And they are considered terminal in a way, because sometimes they don't stop. Now, there are people like, we'll give example, Hungry Fat Chick. She's taken herself seriously enough to say, hey, I really want to lose the weight, and I just want to get healthier and be able to move more and do things more. And she's actually doing it. And then you take our girls like Amber and Chantal, who don't take it seriously at all. They might talk a good game, but they never do anything about it. And I think that both of them could have a longer life. They have potential for a longer life if they change their ways. But both of them have a lot of health issues, and they're only going to get worse. And so you have to think to yourself, well, what do we do in this situation? They are not listening. They're not doing anything to benefit themselves. Well, what's going to happen? It's inevitable. So do we force them to go get help? Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you can force them to get help 2, 3, 10 times, and they get a little healthier. Things go a little better for them. But once they're home, they just go back to their old ways. They don't take it seriously. They don't continue the treatment. And so they're put right back into that terminal ill state of, it's going to happen if you keep going. I think the same could be said for people who do the opposite. No matter how many times you take them to go get help, and it helps them while they're there, If they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. And in a sense, that's being terminally ill. That's being ill to the point of that person's detriment. And you say, yeah, but you can control it. That's different. Terminally ill patients can't control it. But can they control it? Is the question we need to ask ourselves. Can they control it? Because if they could control it, then how did they get here? And if they don't want to stop it, it's just going to keep going. And if it's just going to keep going, what's going to happen? Now, again, I appreciate being passionate. But sometimes the most passionate thing you can do is just love the person. Love the person. Do things to make them happy. Do things to put a smile on their face. And just don't press it anymore. And I know that some of you out there think that's cruel and mean, and that's not a parent, that's not being a family member or even a friend. You push. And yes, there is a time to push. There is a time to say, stop this because I love you and I don't want you to keep hurting yourself. But sometimes you have to realize pushing solves nothing. And sometimes people are passionate about how they live and how they want to live. And there's nothing you can do to change that. No matter how much you want to, no matter how much you love them and care for them, and you want to force them to do the right thing for themselves. But they're not passionate about it. They don't care. They want to do what they want to do. And it sounds like an insolent child. I understand that. But sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to just let it go and let them be. It'll rip your heart out, and it's sad. But sometimes there's nothing more that you can do. Sometimes that's how it goes. And you can be mad, and you can get upset, but the truth is, it still doesn't solve anything. You can be as calm and compassionate and loving, and I think that is a great thing to be. But sometimes that doesn't help. Sometimes shaking somebody, trying to get them to see reality, doesn't help. Seeing them fall and trying so desperately to catch them doesn't help. It's a very harsh reality to face. Sometimes you gotta face it. And in the case of somebody who has an ED, who doesn't eat, being their parent has got to be the hardest thing in the world. But again, we're not there and we don't know exactly what's happening. We don't know. Unless you're there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you don't see what's happening. You don't know if there's any other underlying things that could be happening. And mental illness is mental illness, regardless. Regardless if you can see it physically on the person, like an ED, or not. Mental illness is mental illness. And not everybody can be cured. It seems like it should be simple, but it's not that simple. You can't always cure mental illness. You can't always put mental illness at bay. Sometimes it just is what it is. And then you have to make the choice. Do I shove this person, force them to go back to a hospital where they're miserable, force them to keep themselves healthy? Because when they get out, guess what? They're not going to keep it up. So now that person is just angry with you, doesn't want to be around you, and possibly isolates themselves even more. Or you could have an alternate ending where you make that person happy, you keep them and protect them as best you can while they're alive. You don't force them into doing anything, like going to the hospital or going to a clinic. You just love them. Love them and let it go. Again, it is the hardest thing in the world to do. Terminally ill people, very hard to let go. And when you have a mental illness that keeps you in that terminal ill state, and there's nothing you can do about it, it leaves you very helpless, and it makes you mad. And all of that is legitimate. But it's not going to change anything in some cases. And this is something we should acknowledge. Sometimes you just have to let a person live their life and love them the best that you can, and hope and pray that something may change. But know that it may not. And you're just going to have to accept that. Anyway, that's all I got to say.